Deep web, dark web, you've definitely heard these terms, right? They usually pop up in stories about hackers and these hidden, almost mythical parts of the internet. But what are they really, and where in the world did they come from? Well, the true story is packed with way more surprises and contradictions than you'd probably guess. So let's peel back the layers and take a look at what's really going on.
Okay, so first things first, we've got to clear up the single biggest mix-up. People use deep web and dark web like they're the same thing, but they're absolutely not. The deep web is huge, and honestly, it's mostly pretty boring. It's just any part of the internet a search engine can't find. Think your email inbox, your online bank account, stuff like that. You use it every single day. The dark web, though, that's a tiny, intentionally hidden corner of the deep web. You need special software just to get in. So remember this, all of the dark web is in the deep web, but almost none of the deep web is the dark web.
You know, a good way to think about it is like an iceberg. Everything we see on Google, that's just the very tip, the surface web. Underneath the water is that massive, mostly harmless deep web we just talked about. And way down in the darkest parts of that is where you find the dark web. So how did this whole hidden layer come to be? Well, the story actually starts way back, before the internet we know even existed.
Before the World Wide Web, the US military had this thing called ARPANET, which was basically the internet's grandpa. And even back then, there was a need for some serious secrecy. So they created what were called darknets. These were networks that were hooked up to ARPANET, but were deliberately kept off all the official lists and maps. They could get information from the main network, but they always stayed hidden in the shadows, kind of laying the groundwork for everything that would come later.
And this idea just kept evolving. In the 70s, it was all about hiding connections between military bases and research labs. By the 80s, you had people setting up offshore data havens in places with really relaxed laws to host things like private files or illegal gambling sites. The whole concept of a secret internet was definitely growing, but the name darknet didn't really hit the mainstream until 2002, when a research paper finally gave this hidden world a proper name.
So, you've got the idea for a hidden web taking shape, but there was a huge piece of the puzzle missing, the technology to make it easy for anyone to access anonymously. That was about to change in a really big way.
And the tool that changed everything is Tor. That stands for the Onion Router. Its whole job is to hide who you are and where you're from by wrapping your internet connection in so many layers of protection that it's practically impossible to trace. It is the key that unlocks the door to the dark web.
So how does this whole onion routing thing actually work? It's kind of brilliant, really. First, your data gets wrapped up in multiple layers of encryption. Then it gets bounced randomly between a series of computers run by volunteers all over the world. Each computer, or node, can only peel back one single layer of encryption to see where to send the data next. By the time your request finally reaches its destination website, the path is so scrambled that there's no way for the site to know where you came from.
So who do you think came up with this ultimate tool for online anonymity? Some group of hackers in a dark basement? Nope. And this is the wild part. The original project was actually created and paid for by the United States Naval Research Laboratory. Yeah, let that sink in for a second. The US military itself developed the core technology that powers the dark web. The original idea was to protect their own intelligence agents and informants online.
Well, after the project was made public in 2003, it just exploded. I mean, just look at these numbers. In 2004, there were only about 100 of these volunteer servers. By 2011, that number shot up to 2,000. And by 2016, over 6,000. This huge network of volunteers created this incredibly powerful, decentralized system for anonymous communication that anyone could use.
And Tor wasn't the only game in town. Other projects were popping up, all trying to achieve a similar goal. You had Freenet and I2P, which also created these decentralized anonymous networks. And then there was this absolutely wild venture called HavenCo, which set up a data server on an old seafort off the coast of England, promising total data security with zero government oversight. The dream of a truly private internet was clearly catching on.
So you have all these powerful anonymity tools bubbling just beneath the surface. But in 2011, one infamous website was about to use this tech to drag the dark web out of obscurity and right into the public spotlight.
And that site was Silk Road. You can think of it as basically an eBay or Amazon for illegal goods, and you could only get to it using Tor. For the very first time, this abstract idea of a dark web became a very real and very notorious place in the public imagination.
Silk Road was run by the shadowy figure who called himself Dread Pirate Roberts.
And it was a pioneer in using a then little-known digital currency called Bitcoin to keep all the transactions anonymous. For about 2 years, it grew into this massive, billion-dollar online empire, operating completely in the open, if you knew where to look, until the FBI finally shut it down in 2013.
It turned out Dread Pirate Roberts was a young guy named Ross Ulbricht. His arrest and life sentence was a huge deal, and it really marked the end of that first era. But the damage was done. The blueprint he created, combining Tor's anonymity with cryptocurrency, was a model that countless others would copy for years to come.
But the fall of Silk Road didn't end the dark web. If anything, it just made it more famous. And today, it exists in this state of total contradiction. It's a powerful tool for some of the worst crimes imaginable, but also for some of the most essential freedoms.
And the scale of that dark side is pretty chilling. Just look at this number, 50,000. As far back as 2010, one security firm estimated that the dark web was already playing host to 50,000 extremist websites and around 300 terrorist forums.
Let's be clear, there is no denying the really ugly reality here. The anonymity that the dark web provides is used for some truly terrible things. Drug and weapon sales, forums for hackers and extremists, trading stolen data, and distributing the most horrific illegal content you can imagine. It is a side of the internet that showcases the absolute worst of humanity.
By the way, with all this talk of dark corners, it's really easy for myths to get started. You may have even heard of something called Mariana's Web, this idea that there's an even deeper, more secret layer of the internet. It makes for a great spooky story, but that's all it is. It's a total urban legend, it's not real. But here's the fundamental problem, the central dilemma of the dark web. The exact same anonymity that protects criminals is also a lifeline for other people. Whistleblowers use it to leak crucial information without being found. Citizens living under repressive governments use it to get around state censorship. Journalists and activists in dangerous parts of the world depend on it to communicate safely. It really is the definition of a double-edged sword.
And all of this brings us to one final, really critical question. From its strange beginnings as a secret military project to its modern-day role as a tool for both good and evil, the dark web forces us to face a really uncomfortable trade-off. If we shut it down, we might silence activists and endanger vulnerable people. But if we let it exist, we're providing a safe haven for criminals. So the question we're all left with is this. In our age of ever-increasing surveillance, is a truly anonymous internet a necessary risk?
If you liked this content, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more.